Good afternoon. My name is Matthias, and I work at DATEV. And I'm super excited to give this talk, Data Beats Emotions, where I would like to share some insights of one of our big data projects, what obstacles and what history we have, and what we have to deal with. What you can expect for the next 35 minutes is I would like to start getting you a little bit about our data context, what kind of data we process, what kind of data we get, how we do the actual processing using the Hadoop stack, what reporting we do, what's the business value behind the reported data, and what's upcoming and what's next for us. Because currently we have some things to get or to improve or to get better. The company I work for, DATEV, it's one of the largest IT service providers in software in Germany. We have about 7,500 employees, 1,800 about in dev and development department, and our last year's revenue was 1 million. And we are classical in the B2B market. That is, we make software for tax consulting, accounting, and law business. And what's very specific or special about DATEV is we are cooperative. We are not an incorporated or something like that. We are cooperative. So our members are also our clients. As I already said, we make software. This talk is about the on-premises software we still have. And this on-premises software is Windows-based software. We have around 250 different applications we distribute all over Germany mainly. And we still have a kind of legacy deployment model. We still support and deliver DVDs. You can download the software. That's what many of our customers do. But we still have DVDs twice a year, typically. And because we are stuck with on-premises software, we use Microsoft technology. We are based on the Microsoft operating system. We use Microsoft SQL Server. The data we process and we get. The data logging we use on the on-premises software, it was already there because for doing debugging. What we did, we added some more measuring points we collect. And those measuring points are clicks, typically, exceptions, and performance. So we get information from our clients, how they use our software, if they get exceptions when they use our software, and what's about the performance of those measuring points in the real field, not only in the test environment. Plus, we add them metadata, like what kind of operating system or operating system version he's using. How about the screen resolution? If it's a touch device, or because we are on Windows, you can enable different user experience themes. What kind of user experience themes the user used? So we use this already existing logging at some additional data and collect this data. When we started back in 2014, it was late back in 2014, we had no individual data tracking. But we added individual data tracking in 2017. So we have to deal with the GDPR compliance. That's very crucial for us. So we have two things to keep in mind. You have really to ask the individual person if you are allowed to track its data and to collect it and to send it into our data center. We do this by kind of dialogue. You already know those many different dialogues you see currently, especially in the web environment. But we do this on premises also. And if he agrees, we get the data and we collect the data. If it does not agree or give us the consent, we do not track any data at all. When it comes to sending in the data, what we do, we keep those both informations totally separated. So you have the actual click. It's enriched with a kind of GUID. It's generated on the client side. We cannot regenerate this kind of GUID. And we have the actual agreement or consent. And we send both data sets separately. And to get some more insights and some more information, we use a user ID that comes from the client. And this user ID is used with our data center, where we can do joins and enrich the data we get from the client. For example, if it's a tax consultant or is a lawyer. And if you want to be forgotten, what we do is you're in the big data world. You get many data sets here from the clicks, from the exceptions, from the performance. But only for this special user, one agreement data set or one consent data set. So if he wants to be forgotten, it makes it pretty easy for us. We only have to remove or delete the actual agreement he gave us. We still keep the actual clicks and do reporting on the actual clicks. We can no longer do some joins with the data warehouse information, but we still can keep the clicks, and we don't have to update, remove, delete, or something like that in our real big tables. Makes it pretty easy for us. So you only have to update the much smaller record set for the actual agreement. Some of the figures and numbers we currently have. We are very proud of our consent rate we have. So 83% of every person we ask in our B2P market allows us to collect and send data to our data center, not to Nuremberg. That sums up to over 200 million per day, or in total, about over 30 billion. We have over 200,000 individuals per day that send the data to our system. And what's very interesting for us too is from measuring points, we get every application start or usage that's used on premises. That's so much data, so many records, so many ideas we had. But how do we actually make it happen? See the face, the girl's face? That's how we looked after visiting all those past big data conferences, like here at the DataWorks Summit. But it was really hard to make the right decision, what kind of technology to use to process this data, to make the right decisions, to make reports that make sense for our users. So you can make a lot of decisions or wrong decisions for the technology stack. And we did this. We tried to use a currently existing data cube that we already used for portal tracking in the web environment. But as you can see, it failed. It didn't scale. The performance was very slow, and the response for the slow report adaptation was also given. So we had to make some more research, what kind of technology to use. And that's in 2016. We did a lot of experimentation using the Hortonworks stack. You can see Apache, NiFi. We did some research on using HBase. How about using NiFi, etc. But it still was a kind of mess. And at the end of 2016, it settled down to be a more mature approach, because management made a little bit of pressure to our team, and we had to get into production. So we had to make some decisions. And we stuck to those technologies you see here on the slide. We're still on the Hortonworks stack. We use those tools and APIs you have to use to get into production, like Ranger or Nox. And we added some reporting tools, or we started to use those reporting tools like Zeppelin And because of multi-user requirements, we used Levy. We still use exactly this kind of technology stack. But I still would call it a poor man's big data system. As you can see, there's no more NiFi, there's no Kafka, etc. It's a very simple one. Maybe one reason is, if you can see here, this is our complete pipeline we use. We are a very small team in our department. We are about 7, a party of 7, and the dev for the client side, for doing the tracking, the metering points, for doing the job programming in the cluster. And we have only one data scientist. And yeah, because we are agile, we have a master of ceremony doing the Scrum or Kanban stuff. We have one requirements engineer and one product owner. That's all. We do not have hundreds of persons behind us currently. It's a very small team. And we get some help from our operating system, department that help us keeping the cluster up and running and the reporting too. Here you can see what kind of technologies we use in the whole pipeline. On the client side, it's typically our software we deploy. It's coming from DATEV. We use C++, we use C, we use .NET, and even some legacy applications running VB. And we do the collecting on the client side. We transfer the data using the internet, where you use a technology coming from MindLab to a tracking server that's in the internet secured area, and we have to get to the demilitarized zone where our cluster lives. And that's a kind of security feature we have here in production. And in the cluster, we stay with the Hadoop stack using Spark, Hive, Zeppelin. And for reporting, we currently use ClickView. I will get into detail of this pipeline just in a second. On the client side, we have a continuous monitoring because this kind of technology was already implemented. We get those log information that are written into memory. It's a ring buffer. And we subtract those information that we care about from the ring buffer. And most of the data comes from Germany. So it's very good for us if we would like to process or use the cluster. And the data gets sent into every 3 hours. So you have a continuous flow if you regard all those clients sending in the data. And by the way, we do dog fooding. That is, we monitor our client sites. If we have any buffer overruns, or if you lose any data on the client side already, or how much CPU usage we have on the client side. That's very crucial for us because we don't want to use too much memory or too much CPU on the client side. But tracking should be seamless. We don't want to disturb our applications or real business applications on the client side. So we have this kind of dog fooding, and we use some Zeppelin dashboards for that. The real ingestion, we have to deal with an already existing proprietary protocol to get from the tracker, which is sitting in the internet, to the demilitarized zone where our cluster lives. And we have to deal with the proprietary protocol. Especially in 2016, when we made the decisions, it was not possible to use Kafka. So, and no know-how in our company to use how to use Kafka. So we stuck with this very simple approach with a proprietary protocol. And the transfer is done every 5 minutes. So it's still a continuous flow of data coming from the client many clients sending in the data to our cluster, to the edge nodes. The actual processing for ingestion and for the ETL process, it's all based on batch jobs. They're very easy to handle. You can implement or use cron to start those jobs. And once per night, we do the ingestion to the Hadoop cluster. We do some decompression because the data gets sent into decompressed. We do some filtering because sometimes we get data from the future. We are not sure why this could happen, but we simply drop this kind of data to get a better data quality. We filter out test data. We are using this kind of technology for our test systems too. And we still keep to the KISS paradigm. That is, keep it simple, stupid. It's in production. We have to keep it up and running. The ETL process is done, as I already told you, using batches too. It's run every night. We have several batch jobs using Spark. All those jobs are implemented using Java. They are not implemented in Scala. One reason is when we started, there was technology compliance within DATEV, and we were not allowed to use Scala. We had to use Java. That was our real-world environment. And those jobs run, one is for the agreement data, for the consent data, to process this kind of data, and the other runs the actual click, performance, and exception data. We do some data applications. We handle delayed received data. We have a window of 5 days we use here. That is like a hot data window. We get generated those ORC files with data partitions by day. This is important for us because we have to keep in mind that there's a retention date. We only store data that is for 2 years. If it's older, we have to remove it because of the agreement of our clients gave us. And we do some automatic checks because we have some additional internal compliance regulations. We are not allowed to keep or process data that contains customer confidential data. What we do is we simply scan for sure names or corporate legal forms like incorporated or limited. That's pretty easy because we have so much data. If you have one of those data that comes in and has some sure names in there, we have a violence of our internal compliance regulations, and you have to remove this kind of metering point. And we have to remove the data that comes in there. We can do this because we only have to update those 5 days data sets. After that, another job generates the actual input for doing the reports. What we do is we use the data that's stored in the ORC files and generate specific ORC files for the reporting using a star schema. That is, you have facts and you have dimensions. So you have the data updated and stored in several ORC files. The reporting tool uses Hive and ODBC connections to get the data and to read the data. And currently, we use Hive external tables, no internal tables. So our cluster is based on HTTP 264 currently, 265, sorry. This is a very simple one, as you can imagine. We only have a small team. We have a simple technology stack, and we have a simple technology or a simple hardware stack here. We have a data center. We have 2 racks. You have 1 edge node, 1 master node, and only 5 worker nodes. When we started, we only had 3 workers. currently, the data volume increased a lot, so we expanded to 5 workers in each rack. That's all. We have no separate or extra cluster for NiFi operation or for Kafka or something like that, only for the Hadoop stack. We do have stages, that is, we have special clusters for the quality assurance and for dev, where we can really play with. Because we cannot do this here, this is our technology for the production cluster. Our current reporting is done using ClickView. And I'm not sure if you know ClickView. This means you're in a guided analytics approach. That is, you make reports, and it's very hard for you consumers to make their own reports. As maybe you can remember, we have Zeppelin and Spark. Those both technologies are only accessible from our team, not from our internal customers. Currently, we have 22 different reports we have to support within our team of 7 people. We have some reporting for the user experience department, like click counting. We have some special reports for the exceptions, and we have some special reports for the performance. This is one of those examples. It's a pretty obvious one, I think. You can have a look on the screen resolutions. But for our user experience team, this is very interesting, because if you see there's a specific screen resolution that may incline in the market, you have to make sure your on-premises software supports this kind of screen resolution. Or if more and more devices are used that enable touch, and your software is not enabling or kind of handle touch devices, it's a problem for your software. A little bit more interesting is, because we do invalid data tracking using the user ID, we can make some joins using our data center. And here you can make a chart using the top 10 screen resolutions by target market. Maybe you have some specific kind of users in your target market, like the lawyers or the tax consultants or other clients. And as you can see, it's not evenly distributed over all those different target markets. Those analyzing operating systems is very unsuspected, I would say. But how about this chart? When you can do this kind of reporting, I think you will get in the danger zone, because now you can check how many users are actually using your software, and it still makes sense to support the software or to deploy the software. And you can do this and enrich using the target market, like I showed you here. You get some more information from the data warehouse, like how about how many revenue you have with a specific client. You can make those joins because we do it into the data tracking, and we have those informations in our data warehouse. Yeah, some of our developers already had a kind of feeling that no one really uses their software, but now they can prove. Yeah, and this is my slide. I call it feedback snapshot. Because when we do a lot of presentations and what you can make with the reports we support, we get this kind of feedback in dev and in management. Interestingly, more and more, especially in dev, are getting happy with those kind of reports, because now they can focus on new challenges or produce new software. They don't have to support any longer not so much used software they really don't know if someone uses their software at all. And we get a very strong support from our CEO. Yeah, it's very important for us and gave us a lot of momentum. So this all leads to a kind of business value, you can imagine. You can streamline your software. We do this. We do streamlining for our software. As I already told you, we do optimization for the screen resolution, 4K monitors, etc. We have a program for our paid beta testers, we call those. Now we can prove if they really use the software, and we get a valid feedback from them doing beta test. We can do an A/B comparison for features and for performance. And we can prove if some of those sales bundles really make sense, or if we try to ship or sell programs that are not used at all. And we can do some performance anomaly detection, especially without machine learning. And we did this. A colleague of me made some research and had some looks on the numbers, and we found a bug at Microsoft using Windows 10 and .NET Framework, and they had to fix this kind of bug because we had poor performance. This is all possible even without machine learning. Remember KISS? But here comes the real business value, the beef. We made it possible to discontinue some of our applications. More than 10 applications were discontinued, and more than 30 features in different applications were discontinued. Now, this really saves money, not only in dev, that's very obvious, but also in support. Second, we made detailed field analysis. It's a very interesting one, because we asked the dev guys from a new product that will come up, and they made an estimation out of the guts from the dev team. They told us, okay, 3,000 out of 4,500 customers could easily be migrated to the new product. But as it turned out, when they really measured their figures and numbers, only 400 could be migrated to the new product. So they had to change the strategy for their new product. But this saved us a lot of customer complaints and contact. And what's very interesting for us, using Microsoft technology, it's very important to do an correct counting of your SQL Server licenses. We can now do this very accurate one. And this also saved us a lot of money. That's great, making money or saving money like we can do. But let me give you two side notes here, please. First, be aware, a reputation is long won and quickly lost. Keeping a reputation or trust in your figures, in your numbers, in your reports is a time-consuming job. Don't underestimate this. We still have to prove our data and provide a valid and correct data and show the data is valid on a weekly basis, especially if someone wants to discontinue a specific application. And second, it was a DataWorks summit in 2017 in Munich. There was a very interesting keynote from Barry Devlin, where he made some statements about ethical or human implications on doing big data processing. I never thought that I will get into touch with this in my daily work, but it turned out half a year later, I did. How does a developer feel or a product owner feel if you tell him your product is not used by anyone or only a few and it will be discontinued? Very interesting thing, I think. But currently, we suffer from our own success, I would call it, especially in our company. That is, more and more different departments want to get their specific reports on the data. We have so many data, we have so many information in there, but you have to have very specific knowledge about the data, how to interpret this data, how to read this data. We as a central department or team or group, we are not able to read this data in a correct way regarding the application or your domain you work for. And we are requested to include more different sources. Not only the on-premises software, but also those data center applications or web applications, or different data sources coming from Splunk, AppDynamics, etc. So we do not want to become report generators. We wouldn't want to make some of those cool things like you hear here at the DataWorks Summit. We would like to enable machine learning or doing AI. But we are the bottleneck currently. So if you remember the talk from Henry Brown this morning, we have to evolve from a guided analytics approach where our team sits in the middle, where we do generate the reports, where we do the data preparation, etc., to a self-service analytics approach. If you would like to do self-service analytics, we would like to join with the teams. We would like to empower those teams to do their own reporting on the data we support. They have the knowledge about the data. So we have to decentralize the analysis, open report generation for more users, and that's a totally different approach compared to what we have currently. And keep in mind, you really have to support Excel for this tool set, because if you would like to address BI, Excel is tool number 1 in BI. Still. And if you do self-service analytics, you will have to face some more kind of obstacles, or you have to deal with some different approaches for doing kind of data governance. You have to make sure the data makes sense in the reports they produce. So you have new challenges. And the most important to us is the data literacy. You will have to make sure that the reading and understanding of the data is common sense to all those power users generating of the reports, or you will mess up your total company or business. And this will, has to be done using some classes or teaching, and you have to, enable a kind of process for doing the data governance and guidance for the KPIs. What we did with our power users, we made some POCs because we would like to learn how would they use some of those new tools or processes. And what we did, we used the Elastic Stack and pushed our data in there, enriched the data. If you have an event, we added the event that was before and the event that came after that event. And we let them play with the data. It was very interesting what kind of report they came up with. Here you can see that this is a kind of exception path analysis. The circled one on the center right, is an exception. And you can see in the blue those bubbles around there. Those are the events that occurred before this exception. And the width of line is the white, that is how many exceptions, or how often this kind of path was gone through the system. And the broader the line is, the edges, the more often this kind of scenario occurred. So it makes it pretty easy for you to see in a picture what's some common error situation where this kind of exception came from. It was very interesting for us how they played with the data and what they come up with. This is from another POC we did with our power users. We used ClickSense, the same vendor for, like ClickView, but it's more on the SelfService Analytics tool. It's not a guided analytics tool. And here you can see the number of exceptions on a DVD after its release. So you can track if you have a specific DVD that's better or worse than another one. And this is a dashboard or report that's done with a different target audience. The click path analysis is more for the development team. This report is done for management or for the product owners. And here's another one. Those are the top 5 exceptions by DVD. You have on the x-axis the number of exceptions that occur for how often a specific exception occurred. And on the y-axis, you see how this is distributed on different DVDs. So you can track or find out if a specific exception is a new one that was delivered with a new DVD, or if you have solved your problems with a specific DVD deployment. So the key takeaway for you, maybe I would like to encourage you to start analyzing data that matters for or in your business. You don't have to be one of those Fortune 500 companies and have to have many or hundreds of different employees for your dev team and get those things up and running. You have to find one of those things that matter for your business. And you will have to start, learn, generate value for your business. Simply start. Don't spend too much time designing processes or governance structures. You will come there later on. Or data architectures. I would encourage you to start playing with the data, generating data that really matters for your business, like I did here for us. I appreciate everyone for joining, and thanks for joining. Now the mic is open for your questions.
Just 2 questions here. Thanks for the talk. It was really interesting. And I'm assuming that you're doing this for internal consumption, so no charge for reports exposed to clients themselves.
Could you please use the mic, because would be great. Thanks. Okay.
Oh, okay, nice. So I'm assuming that you're doing this for internal consumption, for dev and product team, and you're using this kind of analytic tool to see where you want to go with next release or what features you want to add. So do you consider survivorship bias here? So there is a high chance that majority of users who use an old software or not connected to the internet won't be able to provide their responses via this tool.
Currently, yeah, it's only used for internal data processing. Was that the question, or?
Yeah, so there is kind of survivorship bias. So let's assume that there is some significant population of users who uses software, but they're not connected to internet because they're using old version or they're not given their contents explicitly for some reason, because there might be some high-level security lawyer organization with high-level security restrictions. I don't know.
Yeah.
So do you consider such users when you're actually making your decisions?
Currently, no. We do not, because of the broad maturity of different clients sending in the data. We know, and we keep this in mind, that we have some of our very big clients that do not send the data in because of some regulations they have. And we do some special asking or reporting from them. And by the way, we make those decisions for discontinuing some of those applications, not only based on our data. You have some more things to keep in mind, like some specific product strategies, and that's how we actually do this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. More? Okay, sorry. So if you have any more questions, I'm around the hall. Feel free to join me. Thanks.